rolling already. All right. And I'm looking at this camera. All right. So, hi, my name is Greg. I was homeless for almost a year, and thanks to some very wonderful people at Hope House, at the Royal City Mission, at Stepping Stone, the Guelph Public Library, I've not only found housing, but I found meaning in engaging and serving my community. I had a fairly successful career in the software industry, and uh, I think everyone can relate to some ups and downs with mental health. I had some pretty severe mental health issues that I dealt with over kind of the course of my adult life, and I managed to stay kind of right on the cusp of just surviving and delivering in my career. About 3 years ago, I started experiencing some chronic physical pain that it's been an ongoing mystery, still trying to figure out the cause of the physical pain. I tried my best to continue in my career, and in about February of 2022, after having moved to Guelph from Toronto the year before for an incredible job opportunity, I realized that the physical pain was getting to the point where not only the pain itself, but the stress that it added on my life, it meant that I just wasn't able to work any longer. And unfortunately, I didn't have any short or long-term disability coverage with the job that I was in, and I had not been very good at managing my finances over the years, so I wasn't in a position to support myself financially. I wasn't able to stay in my home, so in March of 2022, I stepped through a door into the world of homelessness. Uh, that was kind of my final recourse, and uh, I'm I'm an avid outdoorsman. I have been my whole life. So my first inclination, and what I did for most of the year, or close to a year that I was homeless, was live in the woods. And I found I found a kind of determination, motivation to succeed in that despite my pain. As my physical pain started to take more and more of a toll on me, I was still determined to survive, to live on my own terms. So I lived in the woods in and around Guelph for the first few months. I had some friends in Brantford who took me in a little bit over the summer, and I spent a lot of time up in northern Ontario on some property they had up there. So living out in the woods up there. In the fall, I was living in the woods. I got connected to a friend of a friend who had some property uh, near Huntsville, kind of on the edge of the Muskokas. So I was living there. And then as winter approached, the uh, the impact that the cold weather has on exacerbating my pain became too much. So I returned to Guelph in early December, and that's when I started staying at the Stepping Stone, which is emergency shelter. That's one of the services they provide, is an emergency shelter at 23 Gordon. So I started staying there in early December, which is for someone who you know has lived kind of the middle class life. It was a very surreal experience to be immersed into uh, the culture of the homeless community. I honestly a little bit scary at first. I learned about Hope House from the the people that I met as we, waited outside for the doors to open. In conversation, I learned about, where we go during the day. So, what services are available, where do we find warmth and food. My first morning after staying at the shelter that first night was my trek from the shelter up the hill, and and I landed at the doorstep of Hope House, and what a wonderful experience it was when the doors opened on that first morning. I came inside, climbed up the stairs, and was welcomed with some nice hot coffee, and even more meaningful than that were the warm smiles and hellos from the staff and volunteers here at Hope House. I think it was probably in that moment that I knew that I'd be okay. As life seemed to be dumping more and more on me, right, for kind of overcoming the deepest parts of my mental health struggles and from overcoming the deepest parts of my mental health struggles and finding a way to excel in my career, to then getting hit with this chronic physical pain that became so debilitating that I had to leave my career, and then not being able to even live the life that I chose, kind of in the woods, among nature, kind of in my element, and having to come back to the city of Guelph, which I love the city of Guelph, but having to kind of suck in my pride and accept services like the shelter, and accepting food from Hope House and the mission. I went through a period of significant self-discovery, and almost a significant renewal of how I define myself, how I see myself, and who I am as a person. And I just want to note on kind of what that journey involved. I've often described myself as almost a pathological problem solver, and ironically, that mindset probably added to my stress with dealing with this mysterious physical pain. But in terms of the mindset and my own, how I dealt with that on an ongoing basis, I've been an avid lifelong learner, so I looked to podcasts and experts in fields like neurobiology and mental health and addiction, and even spirituality. So first I found, I discovered Alan Watts, who is sadly no longer with us, but Alan Watts was a professor of Eastern philosophy. And I listened to a series of his lectures, which really opened my mind. I then found a podcast called Huberman Lab, which is graciously run by Andrew Huberman, who is a professor of neurobiology at Stanford School of Medicine. And what a fascinating, not only his backstory, but the way that he explains what we understand of how our brain works, the neurobiology of different aspects of life, like addiction, ADHD, uh, what motivates us, right? Dopamine and the other neurochemicals. And he's had some fascinating guests on his podcast, which all of his podcast episodes were, I found, truly inspiring. And last and certainly not least, Dr. Gabor Maté has been a huge influence in my journey, especially over the last year. Most significantly was an episode on the Rich Roll podcast, which is actually way back, October 25th, 2015 was when this episode came out. And I encourage anyone who is watching this, please check out this episode. It's an episode on the nature of addiction. And it was a paradigm shift for me, and really helped. It shaped how I interacted with the community here at Hope House, the community at the Mission and at Stepping Stone, and the people who I'm very honored to call my friends now, and have helped carry me through my journey to this point where I've been housed for over a month now, and continue to come back to Hope House and the Mission and continue to engage with Stepping Stone, because I truly believe that every single person is worthy of compassion, dignity, and support by any means. One of the things that I struggled with, even through this journey, even with the kind of that new paradigm shift in mindset, and my own, I'll call it my own personal growth, right? There's still times of struggle. There's the pain that I continue to experience, and there are days where it's very cold outside. Even when I was able to, come into Hope House or the Mission for shelter and warmth, there is kind of commotion that goes on, just with a group of people gathered, just the conversations, not anything bad, just conversations, the noise. It would get to me that I had no other option, so there was a stress there. And so I've been a big fan of Chuck Palahniuk's books for years. So there was this point where I started to imagine myself as a character in one of Chuck Palahniuk's books. For those who don't know who Chuck Palahniuk is, you're probably familiar with the book or the movie Fight Club. So he was the author of that book. And so I started to imagine myself as a character in one of his books. And so I would sit at Hope House or the Mission, or even waiting outside at night to get into the shelter. And there's always some calamities or just whatever goes on. I would remind myself, okay, right, instead of being stressed by this, try to just perceive it as you are the character. I am the character in this, whatever the title of this Chuck Palahniuk book is. So I started to see not my life, but that part of my journey as just a book, and I was a character in it. But then I started to get a little bit more philosophical about it, or spiritual, and I noticed that, okay, well, I'm not only a character in the book, but at the same time, I'm also the reader of this book. And that, combined with everything I had heard through these podcasts, it all gelled as a significant turning point for me in, kind of my why, my purpose, and then my actions that are intricately part of this this purpose that I have developed. And that's when I started volunteering at Hope House. I'd been coming here for a few weeks. I think it was in early January that I reached out to Chef Kay as she was walking through the common area one morning, and asked if she would need some help. I love cooking, and that's, I found that in the year that I was homeless, I really missed cooking. I love cooking for not so much for myself, but for the joy of cooking and to prepare something for others to enjoy. And so I started volunteering in the kitchen here at Hope House, helping Chef Kay prepare the morning breakfast. I got to tell you that after a night, whether it's sleeping outside or staying at the shelter, even that breakfast that we get at Hope House is such a key part of starting your day on a positive note. So it meant the world to me that I could help prepare breakfast, even as I was homeless myself, but help prepare breakfast and then bring it upstairs and serve it to my friends in this community.
So Greg, what do you think people can do to help individuals move forward?
So I've been thinking a lot about this, and everyone's seen people panhandling on the street. Everyone's walked past a panhandler looking for money, whether they're asking for money for food or whatnot. And we've all been guilty of hopefully not saying, why don't you just get a job, but wondering why this person doesn't just help themselves. I'd like to appeal to the Guelph community to, whether you've wondered that or not, to ask yourself instead, why doesn't this person just get a job? Or why does this person just get up and take the steps necessary? Please ask yourself, why is this person suffering so much that they can't thrive in our community? And I think everyone's familiar with the idea of the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot pulls us towards something, the stick kind of helps guide us. Now, if you take the idea of the carrot and the stick as a metaphor for motivation, I want to add 3 elements to that. I want to add ointment, blanket, and exhaust. And what I mean by those is the ointment is there to soothe pain. The blanket is there to provide comfort. And the exhaust is there to provide a means to help people to let go of suffering caused by pain they're either experiencing now or from past trauma. Hope House is already playing a key role in helping the community members do that. Honestly, I implore everyone to come down and meet us, meet this community. Come have a conversation. We're not scary people, right? And even in the throes of addiction, I've had some of the most amazing conversations. I've had people, I've given and received hugs. I've had people who you might at one day you might see someone angry out on the street yelling, and I've had people yell at me I've recognized in that moment they're suffering so deeply. They don't want to be yelling at someone, but they're suffering so deeply. Just see these people that it's so sad that they suffer. I've found that through through volunteering here at Hope House, the gratitude that I receive has been, an ointment, a blanket, and an exhaust all rolled up in one. That's helped me lessen my own suffering. And yeah, I'll refer back to that podcast episode that I mentioned with Gabor, Dr. Gabor Maté. He talks about how those who suffer from addiction, not only have they experienced significant past trauma and that's left unhealed wounds, but they've also probably in their life had no one that's there to listen to them compassionately and empathetically. And I think the biggest thing that we can all do to further help this community is to be present in their lives and help them know through our actions that they are cared about and that there are people there to listen to them compassionately and help them, even in the littlest way, in a 5-minute conversation where we listen compassionately.
So Greg, thanks so much for sharing today. It's been fantastic to hear more of your story and to learn how we can be helpful to each other.